Hey guys, today we're going to talk a little bit about shading, shadows and light. In the previous video we did some sketching about shapes, and I urged you guys to spend some time practicing in your sketchbooks, drawing anything that you're seeing, especially the basic shapes, circles, squares, and triangles and such. Today we're going to spend some time just learning a little bit about shadows and lights. Alright, so we'll start off with, very simple thing. Like I said, circles is usually the go-to. It's the easiest thing to draw. It's the easiest thing to learn with when it comes to these things. Spend some time drawing circles. We're going to talk a little bit about light. As you can see, we have your circle here. And we're going to start to shade. So when it comes to shadows, you want to think about some of these. Let's make a bigger circle, actually. It'll be a little bit easier for you guys. So a hard thing when it comes to shading and getting the right lighting is trying to imagine where the light is coming from. So let's take, for example, say the light is coming from here. It's coming straight down here. Imagine the light is shining down like this. So light shining down, most of this area is going to be in shadow. Down here is where you're going to start. Typically when you're shading, you want to go in the shape of the object. Imagine this ball. Let's do it right here. It's not just a straight line. This is more of the center. It's more rounded. So imagine invisible lines going around this ball. So when you're shading, you want to try to shade within these lines to give a more realistic look. So we'll get back down here, and actually using the 2B, I'm going to show you 6B. It's really good for shading. Most times I start off with the darkest area and then slowly work my way until what is going to be the lighter area. And you can spend some time, blending and using different things to get it cleaner, but this is just going to be a rough, quick thing that I can just explain and show you guys. You can imagine your light here, the light bouncing down, and you're going to have some type of shadow. It's going to be under here. So this is one way to look at shading and look at light and to look at how the shadows are created down here. Another thing to take into consideration is where the light is bouncing off of and what it is that you're looking at. I'll give you guys another example. So imagine you have a ball again. Let's get a bigger circle. Okay, and your light again is coming from here. And let's say your surface down here is not so dark, it's more of a light color. Well, when the light's coming down here, you're also going to have light that passes by, and then it's going to bounce back up. Some of this light is going to come down and it's going to bounce up to here. So in that case, you're not just drawing your shadows all the way down here. A lot of times your shadows, your darkest areas, are going to be somewhat around the shape, especially when it comes to a rounded object. You're going to have shadows. They're going to start to look something like this. And I'm just doing this really quickly. Doesn't have to be perfect. It just gives you an example. And you'll have more of something going on like this, and you know, nothing's completely white, so slowly you're going to get, depending on what you're drawing, a lot more shading involved. Okay, just gives you an idea so I can explain some of these things. So as your light is coming down, it's hitting off of the ball. You're going to have an area that's going to be lighter up here, and then you're going to have some of that reflective light coming in from down here and over here. So in most cases, especially when you see a ball, you're going to have an area. Usually it's like a small area where it's going to be the highlight. And the highlight is the area that is usually the brightest, and it's usually a small point that's getting the most direct light. Back here is going to be, and all this area is going to be your center light. It's the area that's receiving the most light. This is where it's going to be the most direct. That's the highlighted area. Here is where it starts to get darker, and this area is where you're going to call your halftone. And the halftone is really where it's just transitioning from the brightest area into the shadow. When you get to this part, this is going to be called the terminator or terminus. Pretty sure I spelled it right. This is the area where light can't land on the surface and where the shadow begins. So then right here, you'll see, I'll make it a little bit darker. This area is called the core shadow, or the shadow core. This is the darkest area that's going to be on the surface of whatever it is that you're looking at. It's not the entire area is going to be the same. It's not going to all be the same shadows. And then you have some other stuff to look at. I mean, as you can see, going down here, you're going to have some of the same things happening with the terminator and then the halftone happening down there. But then you have to also think about when the light's hitting, the shadow that's going to be cast. So it depends. If your light's coming down here, your shadows are going to be there. So you think about your shadow. Let's add this in. And underneath, it's going to be very dark. This area is called the occlusion shadow. This is usually, or always, the darkest area in the shadow. It's usually right beneath whatever object you're looking at. This entire area is called the cast shadow. I wrote that a little big. The cast shadow And that's created by the object that the light is hitting, and that's broken into a few parts. The occlusion shadow, which is the darkest part underneath, and then it gets darker. Typically, you'll have, and this part we call the umbra, and that's the darkest part of the cast shadow. And then it slowly will get lighter. We call that the penumbra. And this is where the light's lighter than the umbra, and it's the furthest from the object, and it slowly gets lighter. And it's not going to be as much shadow cast onto this. So the light that's bouncing down, as you can see, we have the light, and the light's bouncing off. This is the light that we just call, I believe we call that the base light, or the reflective light. So you see all these. This is just an example, a quick example of what it is you're looking at. But imagine we had a ball, and the same light was coming down. You had a flat surface, but it was white or was dark, because this is what you'd be looking at typically on a light surface. The light's bouncing off. This was dark. You're not going to get the same reflectivity onto the bottom. That's when you tend to have the darker shadows towards the bottom that will progressively get lighter the further up you go. And you can spend time practicing with this. Same concept is down here, except you're not going to get the same exact shadow, and that changes depending on if you have more than one light source, another one coming here. That's going to change where your shadow is going to go, and maybe in another video I'll break that down a little bit more. You want to practice on just dealing with your shadows, but also shading. So in order to achieve some of the effects, you're going to want to practice shading. One good exercise, just make a rectangle, break it into sections. You take your pencil, and you just shade very lightly. And then you go to the next section. You have to go a little darker. And from there, we'll get darker. You're going to progress and as you can see, you slowly get a darker look. Another way is just taking your pencil and doing the same thing. You can get an appearance like that. So in order to do this, you're going to want to practice on, there's three things that you want to think about. It's understanding your light, understanding your source of light, applying the right pressure when using your pencil, and how to hold it. Because when you're using your pencil, if you're applying little pressure, and this is a 6B, you're going to get nice lines like that. When you apply heavier pressure, you get darker lines. Same thing when you're trying to shade. If you're going to hold your pencil really close and tight when it comes to shading, you're going to get this effect. You get loose on the pencil, hold it to the side, and you also want to not always have the sharpest point, you can get much smoother lines. You're going to want to practice with that, and slowly you can add more color to an area if you just apply a little more pressure and just spend more time on top of it. You'll slowly get that nice blend. So as again, I'll say, it just comes down to understanding light, your pencil pressure, and how to hold a pencil. Practice as much as you can when it comes to doing this. You can try it with different pencils. You'll get different results. This is the 2B. It's a lot harder than the 6 as far as the lead, but you can get similar results. Just have to be patient. This isn't something that's going to happen overnight. You have to practice at it. You could take anything and do, let's see, and do for practice. I'll take this apple, for example. If you look at the apple, I'm sitting near a window. My light source is coming in from over here. And as you can see, the light is hitting the apple this way. You can see right here the shadow core. And there's other factors that is going to have, you know, this is a shiny apple. It's not just a matte color, but you also have the light that's coming in, and then you have the light that's bouncing off. So you get a little bit of reflectivity here. You have light that's bouncing down here, so it's a little bit lighter, but then you have that dark shadow core that we just talked about. And you also have right here the highlight. The center light is all around here. You have the terminating shadow. Your core shadows all around here. And then your cast shadow. It's hard to see because where the camera is located, but right under here is where you're going to have the darkest part. That's the occlusion shadow, and then it's dark right around here. It's the umbra, and it slowly gets lighter about, you know, around this area. The re-umbra. So same concept. Drawing apples, just getting a ball or something to practice with is a really good thing to use. Spend a lot of time with it. I would suggest getting the apple and just drawing as much as you can. You know, take a screenshot of this if you want. You can look up some of these things. Practice what you can. Again, get your pencils and practice often with all of your pencils. Do as much as you can. 2B is the one that I use as a standard, but I also go through some of my other pencils. And I'm not going to say I use every single pencil, but for the most part, every pencil has its own use. It just comes down to preference. I said in an earlier video, get yourself a nice little book, a little sketchbook, some pencils. They're not that expensive. Get some erasers. There's some other things that you'll need for more advanced stuff we'll talk about in a later video. If you guys have any questions, comment, like, subscribe. I'm going to be growing this page slowly, but we're going to get to it. And I'll talk to you guys again later. Have a good day. Keep practicing.